So the other day I made a video talking about 5 things that I love about Star Wars Outlaws. So today it's only right that I talk about 5 things that I'm not a huge fan of. Now this video honestly is so hard to make because I am absolutely loving the game. It's honestly one of my favourite Star Wars games ever made probably. So to find things that I don't like is a very nitpicky thing to do, but I feel like it's only right to discuss these things. But before I do go into those 5 things, make sure you are subscribed to the channel with the notification bell turned on so that you don't miss out on any more Star Wars Outlaws or Star Wars gaming videos. But without wasting any more time, let's jump straight into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is the story. Now overall, from start to finish, I absolutely loved it. But the thing that I wasn't necessarily a fan of as such is that it did take me a couple of hours to feel properly gripped by it. Once the story started and it was introducing Kay and Nix and stuff like that, I was digging that quite a lot. But getting on to Toshara, doing some of the missions here and there and stuff, I feel like it took me a bit of time to really feel properly gripped by it and to really care about where things were going. I had fun doing it, and I'm obviously a big fan of Star Wars stories, so I'm not saying that the story section for that was bad, but I'm just not a huge fan of how long it took me to be properly gripped by it. But it's not a major deal for me, honestly. Like, every story has peaks and troughs throughout. It's good to slow down a little bit and then speed back up, because by the time it got to the end, it was just honestly mental. I had such a blast, but it did just take me a little bit of time to get fully into it. Number 2 on the list is also somewhat related to the story, and it's more just the reputation system and how I didn't really care for it that much during the actual story itself. The reputation system for this game was a big thing that was being focused on in the marketing for this game, so I thought it would have a pretty big impact on the overall story, but it honestly doesn't really. It only impacts in terms of your gameplay, which, to be fair, as a Star Wars fan who's a big fan of like the canon and having everything make sense, I'm glad it doesn't impact the story, because at that point it's like, well, what is the actual true story of the game? But I feel like I would care a lot more about the reputation system whilst I was doing my playthrough of the game. But ultimately all it really did was make some places in the story super easy to get through, other places not so easy. So I didn't really care that much about it, which I thought was a shame personally. Now that I have finished it though, I think I will be caring about it a lot more, because it does impact how your open world experience plays out, which I think is ultimately the main reason for it, but I just think it is a shame that it wasn't as utilised in the story. Number 3, and this is probably my biggest gripe, is that some of the facial animations and some of the takedown animations weren't really that great at times. Most of the time with the takedown animations, it was more just, I think, because I was on like the top of a stair and my enemy was on the bottom, so it would just get really janky and weird. So I do kind of understand that a bit more, but even on a level plane, some of them were just a bit not great in terms of the overall like targeting and the mapping of the characters to each other and stuff. But it wasn't a huge deal for me, but it's just one of those things that doesn't look particularly great, especially when the game's just launching. So that was a bit of a shame, I thought, but it definitely hasn't taken me out of the experience really, so that is something I am glad about. Number 4 is a little bit similar in a way, and it's just when you call in your speeder bike at times, sometimes it'll just fly around in a circle around you, like super far away but super quick, so I don't really know where it's going to end up, and that kind of just bugged me a little bit, to be honest, because it's not a massive deal and most of the time it would only impact me whilst it was quiet, but it was just kind of one of those things. I'd call it in hoping it would spawn right next to me, I can jump on and go, but instead I'd call it, it would spin around for about 5 to 10 seconds just having a bit of a fritz, and then I could jump on. Just that like minor delay is just a bit frustrating and does kind of take you out of it a little bit, because there is that slight annoyance. So that was a bit of a gripe with me. I'm hoping that's something that can get fixed at some point, because it is just a little annoying. It is really nitpicky, but like, yeah, I'm just hoping it can get sorted. Now the 5th and final thing on the list, and this is super nitpicky, it's just sometimes how long it can actually take to actually reach a planet to be able to initiate the landing sequence. I appreciate it is just a bit of a show of sense of scale and stuff, and I do totally appreciate that. But for example, when I first made it to Akiva, I was so incredibly far away that it honestly took me what felt like 2 to 3 minutes just to reach there, to be able to initiate the landing sequence, and there was pretty much like no dialogue or anything, and it was just a super like quiet low point in the game where it was just a bit like, you know, I'm sat there doing basically nothing for 2 minutes, so I was just getting a little bit bored at that point. Now I don't think it's like that every time you go back to Akiva, thankfully, but I still think it would have been nice to be able to initiate the landing sequence a little bit quicker. I know you can fast travel to planets without having to go to the ship, so that is good, good in all fairness. But if you don't want to fast travel at times, that experience of maybe being really far away from the planet can just be super duper long trying to go back. So yeah, it would be nice if they made the time to initiate landing sequence a little bit lower, or at least like the distance can increase to be able to do such a thing. Again, I know that's just super nitpicky. It's not really a huge deal, honestly, but it is something that I had a bit of a gripe with whilst I was playing. But they are the 5 things that I'm not a huge fan of, particularly with the game. Like I said, it's super nitpicky because honestly, this is one of my favourite Star Wars games of all time. The story was fantastic, the gameplay was good. It's absolutely not groundbreaking or anything, like most of the gameplay elements we have seen before in other games, but I'm ultimately there to be immersed in Star Wars and have a good time and really enjoy the story, and that is absolutely what I did, and there's so much to do afterwards. So yeah, there's 100% easily a lot more positives for me with this game than there are drawbacks, and even the drawbacks aren't that big. So yeah, I just feel like it was good to try and talk a little bit about that and just get those honest opinions out there, because I feel like they are worth talking about. But that is it from me today, guys. Let me know if there's any issues you've had with Star Wars Outlaws thus far or not. Thank you all very much for watching, and may the Force be with you always.